Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our webinar, Measuring Sustainability Progress. My name is Caroline Glofka from the Global Coffee Platform, and I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. I see participants are still pouring in as we had just over 200 registrations. It's quite amazing. So we see more participants coming and joining here. Welcome to you all. Today we want to show you how measurement sustainability works, what are the assets that are already available by the coffee platform, but also the importance of streamlining data and why aligned reporting is so important. We have prepared an exciting 19 minutes to you explaining some of the assets, but making it very tangible for you how they're being used already and tested. Let's look a little bit at the topics today. We want to give you a little bit where measurement stands within the context of the Global Coffee Platform, and then move on to the exciting part of why, what, and how we measure, especially details coming from 3 countries, that is Kenya, Vietnam, and Brazil, and then how we work with additional partners and also across other commodities as well. And then understanding at the end that sustainability is a joint responsibility, so it concerns all of us, and looking at the role that you could take here. A few housekeeping remarks. The session is being recorded for anyone who is not able or was not able to participate today. I wonder if anyone is missing with the great participation we have achieved here. Please use the question Q&A box throughout the webinar. Put your questions in there. The questions might be answered throughout the webinar. If not, we will get back to you later in an individual email and answer those questions. In order to keep you on your toes, we have very high temperatures here going up into the 30s, and this is centigrades. It's very hot for us. To keep you on your toes and activate you, we have prepared a few polls where we hope and motivate you to participate in. I have with me a few of my colleagues. That is Andreas Teha. He is the moderator today and is going to take you through this webinar. He is also responsible for measurement in the Global Coffee Platform. With us is also from Kenya, my colleague George Vatena, also an expert on measurement. And then from Vietnam, we have Nhung and Chung. They are going to share how measurement is progressing in Vietnam. And from Brazil, Eduardo Matavelli and Tamara Barim are going to share their progress. But let's step back 1 minute and look where measurement sits within the Global Coffee Platform. So the vision of the Global Coffee Platform is to build a thriving and sustainable coffee sector. And we do this by 3 functions, which is convening for impact, where we activate local and global stakeholders, GCP members and partners in order to work together collectively to address common issues in the coffee sector. We enable local action where we utilize networks and platforms to work together as well, especially addressing common issues, again, here at the country platforms you see to the left, where we closely work with 7, but a wider network of 11 country platforms. And to really create learnings, share best practices, and be able to scale them either in the country or ideally also to other countries. Measure to advance, that's the part we're going to zoom in on today here. This part is to share, again, best practices, but also to provide GCP assets that are already being tested and used in the field, and how the data that is being collected can in the end show progress on sustainability. This is not only to report in the end or be able to report on sustainable development goals. It's more actually, because we are trying to understand also with collecting data, what are good interventions, what's working well already and what is not working well, what are the aspects of environmental, social and economic points that need to be improved. So the why is really the farmer who stands in the middle to improve the farming, not only of coffee, but also the environment of the country the coffee is produced in, and the whole supply chain there. So with that, it leads me to the next slide and handing over to my colleague, Andreas.
Thank you, Caroline, and welcome to everybody also from my side. It's exciting to see all of you here and to give you a little insight on what GCP is doing on measurement especially. As Caroline already mentioned, the three functions, let me show you a little insight on the three key themes GCP is working on. So our goals are obviously a thriving and sustainable coffee sector, and we derived the three themes from those SDGs you can see there in the background. And we have built some kind of roadmap for us to get there. The three themes here are improved livelihoods with all the subtopics: gender, better working conditions, improved health and nutrition, for example. Then we have farmer prosperity as one of the targets or one of the themes that help us to get there. And we are working on conservation of natural resources. What we are focusing on today is basically the downsize part here, the part you see at the bottom. This is giving us guidance on what we want to measure, how to get there, right? But before you dig into the tools and into the why, for example, this is the first question we want to answer here. Why do we measure in detail? So now I'm going to look into the why. And the why is answering some key questions about why are we measuring? Why do we do it on different levels? And why is it important to standardize? With that, I'm going to hand over to George, who is guiding you through this session and giving you a big overview about why we do this. George, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andreas, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the people that are joining us this day. Next. So I'm going to try and answer a few questions. Andreas, next. As you know, to why we measure. And I just wanted, to rush your brain on a couple of questions. First, do you know that the International Coffee Organization global theme for 2019-2020 is on sustainable coffee value chains and responsible sourcing? For those that know, just raise your hand up, not the Zoom one, your personal hand. But also, do you know that for some reason, and for which I will assume is because coffee is a front runner in many decisions, the UN decided to use the picture of a coffee farmer holding coffee berries, to discuss the issue of responsible consumption and production under SDG 12. So just because I think we are front runners, they decided, to use coffee to show that that even as the population gets to about 9.6 billion in 2050, which needs an equivalent of 3 planets to do that, that there needs to be work, and that's why responsible consumption and production matters. But do you also know that many of us in here today joined together, facilitated by the Sustainable Coffee Challenge, in coming up with a pocketbook on how to sustainably source coffee. And again, the idea why, sustainable coffee is important is really because the efforts that we put in place, and in a partnership that we had almost 3 years ago now we put a figure of about $360 million spent annually on trying to make coffee sustainable. Ideally, because the more sustainable coffee that is consumed, the better for our planet, the better, for the people that work around it, the better for our environment, possibly, creating jobs for that boy you can see there, washing a few cherries as he grows up and goes to school. I mean, that's what, sustainable coffee means. Next. Did you also know that almost a year and some months ago, GCP, in a call for action, mainly to address some of the challenges that we are working on, encouraged roasters and retailers, among four things, one of them to really transparently report on the volumes of sustainable coffee purchased every year. And of course, these being a way to show the other commitments that they've put in place, including, of course, making forward-looking commitments to source more, and of course, paying remunerative prices for this. And in addition, even to other investments in place just to ensure that coffee is produced more efficiently. And for this, as we include the topic of measurement today, we are glad to say we have a way of showing what those efforts that people are putting on the ground lead to through the sustainable coffee common indicators that you will hear more about during this discussion. But to show you in the next slide what happens when people answer your call, next, you will find that out of the few that decided to answer this particular call, we have out of all the coffee that was purchased as rainforest in the previous year, 55% was by these front runners who agreed to take up this call, to report, to do the first voluntary reporting on what sustainable purchases they've made. And 25% of these GCP roster retailer members who agreed to the call to report on what sustainable purchases they've made also take about 25% of what was sold as fair trade. And again, here note, we are talking about what was actually bought. And for fair trade, this actually means out of the 77 million euros that was paid to coffee farmers and cooperatives as premium, about $22 million came from GCP members. Can I hear a hearty clap to these members who decided, to be the first to put their money where their commitment is? A hearty clap, please. And with that, of course, I would like to invite you to look out for the real full report about what these members have put as part of their commitment, but also to remind you, it's really not about, how much is sold as fair trade or how much is sold as 4C or how much is sold as cafe practices, because we had that also, or how much is bought, as any other standard, but it's really about the amount of effort that is put in these producing regions to ensure that that coffee meets some sort of requirement to be seen as sustainable. That is what we are celebrating today. And that is what then we are saying we would want to measure.
Thank you, George, for this insight here. Yeah, now that you have seen what we can achieve or show with our reporting or with our measurement assets, I would like to give you a little overview of what are we doing in measurement? Like, what are we measuring? What is in the package of our measurement assets? we're just focusing on a few of them, because otherwise this would expand the session here. And what do these key assets we're focusing on today really support you with? And so I'm starting to come up with a little scenery. Imagine there is the awesome coffee organization that is buying coffee and wants to work on improved livelihoods here. You remember this little theme from one of the first slides, contributing to these SDGs here. There are two key questions they have to ask themselves: what to do and how, and are we on the right track? To answer these questions, GCP and our network together in the last years came up with some key assets. On the upper question, what to do and how, we created some kind of library of guidance material. And on the question of, are we on the right track? We came up with the measurement assets. We are today focusing on the 15 common indicators. We call them the Coffee Data Standard. Those have been derived from a former project, which is basically the library you have seen here in the previous slide. These are the most common indicators that have been identified in a multi-stakeholder approach. And we are focusing on these today, and we are showing you where and how these really contribute to our reporting across the globe in all different countries, and how relevant they are in our activities on the ground. But also, as George already mentioned, the sustainable purchases is part of it. It's basically the only exception, which is not farm level. So how does it work? The main problem is in reporting or in measurement, or one of the main problems is that there is no clear alignment, or there haven't been a clear alignment on how to measure and compare the data, how to keep the data in a way that we can compare our information. And so this is what the Coffee Data Standard is doing. It is harmonizing the indicators and metrics. Indicators, aligning on indicators is one thing, but aligning on metrics is a different story. So I give you an example. We have report A, which shows the geolocation, which shows costs in a certain way here. And we have, for example, the yield, which is shown in 27 bags per hectare. And the water usage is supposed to be higher, whatever high means, right? This already gives some kind of interpretation. The report B, though, is looking at the same issues, but in a different way. Here we have, for example, fertilizer cost in Vietnamese dong per acre, right? We have labor cost in a different metric, and we have energy per month, right? Also in cost. And then yield is also, again, a different metric, kilogram per hectare instead of bags per acre, right? Water usage, again, is a bit more clear, but it's not aligned. How to compare this, right? We are comparing apples with pears. It's not really working here. So what we do in the Coffee Data Standard, we bring these together, yeah? You can see the geolocation is aligned. The production cost has all the items in it together and giving it a whole number in US dollar. And we have kilograms per hectare. This is the aligned report here. And the water conservation practices is then giving all the information together on practices, because applying practices in different countries, there are different requirements for these across different countries. So we said we just look at practices in that case. Right, okay, so what does it give you? What does it help you with? If you want to demonstrate your impact against others, for example, on a regional basis, on a regional level, or if you want to save money and effort for data collection, given the fact that ideally, the more people, the more institutions are making use of standardized reporting in the way I just described, over time, you will be able to save money for data collection, yeah? You can also use the standardized way, the standardized definition to support the development of farmer services. This is one of our aims here as well. And for those who are applying traceability systems, you can easily attach these indicators and these data descriptions to these systems to improve your messaging towards your customers. So you're already starting to create some kind of customer-facing messaging built into your systems, yeah? And basically, of course, contribute and learn, contribute to or learn from certification audits, which is an important part here because certification plays a big role in sustainability. With that, I'm going to go into, or I'm going to hand over to the countries, starting with Kenya, where we show you a little bit more on how does that work on the ground? How is measurement taking place, not necessarily using the standardized methodology, but always being linked to it, yeah? Always looking at how do we bring people together? How do we measure our progress? How do we set our local agendas? All these different things are tied together. And we are going to show this to you now using the country insights. And again, I'm handing over to George, starting with Kenya.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for the nice insight about measurement next. And also, it's glad to know that we all have the same problem in terms of whether or not we are able to measure or what indicator to choose and all that. And I believe that's part of the solution that the uh, common indicators and the coffee data standard is trying to solve. So coming down back to the countries and what measurement is supposed to help us do, I just want to give you a quick overview about us. So we are in Kenya, and as you can see in the curve, unfortunately or fortunately, fortunately in terms of people are able to flatten curves, which is a good thing. But unfortunately in Kenya, we've been flattening the wrong curve. So like you can see here, when all our other partners near us are increasing in production, we around Kenya, have been going down. And if we are to go by the SDG, instead of doubling our production, we actually halving our production. So this then happens to be a clear thing or a clear issue that Kenyans are grappling with and are standing together to work towards through all forums and especially through the Kenya Coffee platform. So here I'm putting before you a challenge. Next. And then after you've seen the challenge, how can we go a bit deeper into that particular challenge? So what you can see here is using the common indicators in terms of on the issue of yield and productivity. I'm mapping before you a Kenyan smallholder or a small farmer, a Kenyan estate farmer, our fellow or I would say sibling. I was about to say brothers, and I didn't want to say brothers, and then I say sisters for Costa Rica because then people would be on my case. But our fellow sibling in Colombia, being almost 3 times what our Kenyan coffee smallholder produces, and our siblings in Costa Rica producing almost double of what the Kenyan average is. So ideally what we are saying here is that using a common measurement, we are able first to ask ourselves, where are we? And then we are also able to ask ourselves where we are, because without comparing with anyone else, like we have a saying where I come from, that if you've not gone outside your home, you think, I don't want to use my mother because I still think she's the best cook, but you think your mother is the best cook. But in this case, when we look amongst ourselves, you're like, okay, we can get it to what the estates are giving us. But then when we look to our siblings down in Costa Rica, and the reason I choose a country like Costa Rica is because the land size is almost the same. We have about 100,000 hectares of arable coffee land, but also the other part is really the processing and also the market for wonderful coffees is the same. So if as and because of that, because of using that indicator, we are able to set ourselves a target as a country that between 2019 and 2022, we will double our production, at least to get somewhere close to where our siblings are. This is an example of the symptom, and we've used the indicator to show that. Next. And then, of course, once you've looked at the symptom, you need to think about, diagnosis. And again, together, first we get a bit deeper on the diagnosis, and then looking at really what are some of the additional elements that are keeping our production not only low, but also going down. So with clear indicators in terms of cost, in terms of income that we are getting and all that, we are able then to sit down and look at really what's the economic viability of coffee farming in the country. And then, of course, again, since we said sustainability is our shared responsibility, we have partners like GIZ who are very kind, in supporting us, then to put the medicine together, take the knowledge that we need to move the coffee sector from, a downward spiral or a flattened curve, to an increase. And then, of course, then working with the government, then ensuring this knowledge reaches to the people that need it. Next. And of course, then the diagnosis kit, like we are talking about today, collecting data in the field. And by the way, the presentation is supposed to be that complex because I'm talking about a complex problem. So using a diagnostic kit, common indicators, setting common targets, then we are able to go down and collect that data from the farm. We are also able, especially because like I said, a country like Kenya, marketing and processing of coffee is usually done in groups, which we call co-ops, but then also that are managed by an actual state department, then also partner with that state department in clearly checking those key performance indicators and whether they are working, because we all agree we need to move forward together. So for these, we have a set of indicators, clear ones, on first, just farm data, so that then we are able to say, when we say we have 115,000 hectares, it's really clearly those 1,000 hectares, and we can tell you exactly where we are. But then we are also able to look at economic issues. We're also able to look at a set of environmental issues, guided by some guidances that I'll talk there before, but really utilizing, the common coffee data standard. And then, of course, then we have tools that have been developed, partly by GCP, to start with the red one at the very top. Others that we've partnered and, of course, been funded, we've partnered with the government, like the Cooperative Online Information System. And then we also realized that our Kenya National Bureau of Statistics also has another tool that they're using, to collect data during censuses and so on. And we discovered the same tool is actually being used by Nigeria, to get information from about 2 million farmers. So then using GCP's knowledge, then we are able to use the data standard to take that particular data, format it such that, the kind of tools that these different players are using can then take in that data, and then we are able to collect data from the feed. And again, the reason we do the diagnosis is not just for collecting data for data's sake, but also to ensure that there is feedback to farmers for action, feedback to stakeholders for strategy and policy, and then also ensuring we are collecting data as efficiently as possible. But then we also share some of that anonymous data, to GCP, again, for analysis and inference at a more global level. And of course, the reason we are doing all this is to ensure that the trainings we just talked about in the previous slide, or the efforts that have been put there, are working. The medicine is working. Next. And of course, we're also trying to ensure that we are talking with one voice. So of the 15 common indicators, we use these to decide the indicators that we are collecting data from the farm with. But we also know, like I showed you on the first slide, the fact that there is also a global discussion on the SDGs. And there is a particular target, that talks about sustainable food production and agricultural practices. And we've looked at that to ensure that, the things we are collecting on the field are tying, so that tomorrow, if Kenya wants to report on its sustainable production of coffee, then they can easily use that data and share it, for us to check ourselves on the SDGs. And last but not least, we know there is the Delta framework that is also looking at things cross commodity. And we also looked in the indicators that we are collecting in the field, we also ensured that we looked at that, just to ensure that we are on the same line of thought. Next. And in summary, that is just, sharing what we are doing and how measurement, helps us as Kenyans, in ensuring that one, we are not flattening the curve. This particular curve cannot be flattened. And two, that then we are also feeding back to the government for proper policy to ensure that there is an enabling environment to get things done. Thank you.
Thank you, George. So again, it was basically summarizing on a country example, how we convene and bring people together to align on collective action, but also how do we measure or how can we measure in a standardized way. And it's not only about implementing the indicators and the metrics, it's mainly about how to share the data across different institutes and entities. I think this is a key message we should point out here. With that, I would like to hand over to Vietnamese team. In this case, it's Nhung, giving us some insights on how do we bring measurement to action in Vietnam and what does it contribute to. Jung, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Andreas. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. And my name is Nhung. I'm from GCP Vietnam. And today, on behalf of our team, I would like to share with you our insights on the measurement in Vietnam. And I'm sorry that due to the connection reason, I am switch off my camera. Okay, next, please. In my presentation, I would like to share with you some four main contents. The first one is the objective of implementing the GCP measurement tools in Vietnam. The second content is I would to present with you the basic structure of the tool when I will give you an overview on what we are measuring. And the third content is then I share with you some how our Vietnamese stakeholder here can use and can use the insights and learnings from our data collection. And finally is our plan for the upcoming time. Next, please. As you know that we are having a high demand for measuring sustainable practice adoption to support the local coffee producing community and change the general mindset to better reach the domestic and approach market with high quality products. That is why since 2018, GCP Vietnam and coffee sector have implemented the GCP progress tool in order to improve the sector management through application of technology in data collection for identification of coffee region and to enhance the transparency in the value chain and also to support the traceability of the products. Next. And you know, we have a questionnaire which have more than 50 questions, and with these questions we try to understand four main topics. The very first one is the basic information of the family owning the farm, plus their GPS-based plot information. The second topic is information the farm characteristic, which we collect information on the water resources, irrigation system, tree management, soil type, etc. And the third topic is the production adoption level of sustainable practices. In this section, we have more in-depth questions about the actual farming practices, which based on the Vietnamese national sustainability curriculum. And last but not least, we also collecting indicator on uh, environment, economic, environmental and social aspect in which we collect the information on the farmers' income, their input uses, the production cost, and also their accessibility to the finance. Okay, in Vietnam we have collecting the data in the two areas of in the Central Highland, which are the Krông Nang and Di Linh districts, and we also have the data sets, and based on that we have some key learnings and insight from those data collection. The first one, you can see that the coffee trees in Vietnam are aging since the coffee business grew intensively in the 19th. In the average number of productive coffee is low, which had an impact on the productivity of the coffee. As you can see in the right hand, that our insight on the coffee tree in the age of the coffee trees is contributing to one of the common indicator on the coffee data standard. The second insight from the data collection is there is a high demand for high labor, because many farmers here need to invest more financial resources for high labor, which increase the production costs. The third insight is that the amount of organic fertilizer used in the field is still low. As in the Krong Nang district, only 17% of farmers using organic fertilizer in their farm, meaning that farmer needs further trainings and knowledge building on a better fertilization and soil conservation practices. And we also find that farmer are having a high demand for finance access. Thus, you can see that all the insight from the data collection are contributing to the to the 15 common indicators of the coffee data standards. Okay, next please. Then I will go to a to dive deeper in one of the insights that we find out during the data collection in Krong Nang. In Vietnam, we have a recommendation on the amount of water used for a Robusta coffee tree is 400 liter per coffee tree per route, and this amount of water is included in our national sustainability curriculum, and with many training and with many efforts from the extension center and traders, then you can see in the chart that more or less the farmer in Krong Nang district are applying the recommended amount of water, and it is one of the insights that we found that we can work more on the data collection. Okay, with we have on our hands the information of more than 50,000 coffee farmers in Vietnam, and we want to we have some analysis, and we want to share with the result and insight with Vietnamese stakeholder and enable them to use in their analysis and planning for the private sector. For the private sector, we see that they are using the inside the data from the survey to create their strategic planning and to improve their competitiveness through the traceability system and enabling the investment and support to the production. For the Vietnamese government, for the public sectors, they are using the data. They use the shared information to identify issues of the coffee production, such as the amount of water, pesticide, fertilizer used in coffee production, and based on that, they will mobilize and coordinate the resources, enhance the policy impact to smallholder farmers, and strengthen the investment and also the public-private partnerships. And we also contributing to the existing program of partners, since since in Krong Nang and district we have some partners implement their program here, and by evaluating the results of the program and their impacts, as well as the farmer adoption of sustainable practice into their production, so we can give them on the what they are doing, have achieved and what need to improve. And last but not least, the information gathered also provide a baseline for implementing our approach towards the sustainable coffee region, and also give an idea on a new initiatives. And we see that we are having a lot of work regarding to the GCP progress tool, and here is our plan for upcoming time. And the very first one is we will keep sharing the information and responsibility across the local coffee stakeholders for joint activities and decisions. We also try to road test harmonized metrics and create a cross-learning among coffee actors. And we will promote aligned reporting and collective action. And in the future, we will work with the local authorities and the Ministry of Agriculture to advocate them to officially recognize the GCP Progress Tool as an official tool for coffee sector in Vietnam. And we will include the allied metrics into the local initiatives to become comparably measurable. And that is all of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Then I will hand over to Andreas.
Thank you, Nhung, for this insight. And again, this is showing how the countries are actually contributing to, you know, standardized reporting on the one hand side, or utilizing standardized reporting on the one hand side to enable local action in a more aligned way. And again, to convene local stakeholders, create local ownership, and support local programs through our network and remain comparable. So in the Vietnamese context, we're actually also starting to create learnings based on standardized indicators and metrics as well. I would like to hand over to the Brazil team, who will give us a little bit more of an insight on how this, as we call it, sustainable coffee regions concept, I would compare it with a continuous improvement cycle, how this works on a local basis and how this is being applied and what kind of role measurement plays in that regard. With that, I would like to hand over to Eduardo Matavelli and Tamara Barim from the Brazilian team here.
Okay, thank you, Andreas. Hello, everyone. I'm Eduardo Matavelli. I'm agronomist and the consultant of the GCP Brazil team. I will turn off my camera because the connection. Next, please. Well, let's start it. This slide shows our tools for continuous improvement. On the top, we have our National Sustainability Curriculum, also called in Brazil CSC, Coffee Sustainability Curriculum. And below, we have the CSC fundamental items. It's a summary of the CSC. It's important to say that the CSC, the National Coffee Sustainability Curriculum, it's a guide, it's a curriculum that contains 122 good agricultural practices. The CSC fundamental items, as I said, it's a summary of the CSC. Below, we have our sustainability indicators, our CSC app, and our internal management system. When we identify gaps, we work in collective action initiatives. It's important to say that all these tools were created collectively through our Brazil working group that represents all the coffee regions in Brazil, both Arabica and Robusta coffee. All these tools are within the CSC app. Next, please. The CSC indicators, as I said, we have here in Brazil created collectively 35 KPIs. In red, eight KPIs related to economical issues, cost of productions, among others. In green, we have 13 environmental issues, KPIs related to environmental issues, KPIs related to agrochemicals, preservation areas, soil conservations, rational use of water, climate change, among others. And in brown, we have 14 indicators related to social issues, health and safety, training of the producers, labor legislations, among others. Next, please. This slide shows that we are aligned here in Brazil. Our sustainability indicators are aligned with the 15 coffee data standard indicators. We are aligned with 13. This way, we are aligned with almost 90% of the coffee data standard indicators. This slide shows how we are working in the continuous improvement process. The flow of information collected by the app comes and goes within the institution. It's important to mention, as GCP, we provide training for the technicians and how to use the app, how to collect the data on the field. We provide the trainings for the institution in how to implement the IMS, the Internal Management System. This way, we are acting together to eliminate bottlenecks and promote the continuous improvement. All these tools work together. This way, as I said, they promote continuous improvement of the farm, of a specific region, of a state here in Brazil, and the coffee sector as a whole. Of our 35 KPIs, I bring our 4 KPIs that we are measuring within the responsible use of agrochemicals initiative. The KPI number 9, coffee farms that have a proper storage for agrochemicals. And the KPI is number 10, coffee farms that send all empty agrochemical packages back to suppliers and keep a record of receipts that's certified. No reused package in found the property. Next, please. Also highlighted in green, the more 2 KPIs related to agrochemicals initiative. The KPI number 25, workers trained in agrochemical application, and the 31, coffee farmers and workers that use the PPI, the personal protection equipment, in all situations that might bring risks of contamination by agrochemical. And highlighted in red, our KPIs that we are working on the social well-being. The KPIs number 28, 29, and 30. 28, coffee farms that have access to clean and pure water. Works that earn at least minimum wage. Coffee farms that provide accommodation housing. This way, we use our KPIs to improve and to follow our initiatives here in Brazil. These slides, it's important to say that the CSC app, the reports of the CSC app allows comparison of the KPI of my institution on the column G. It allows comparison between my institution with the municipality, the state, the region, the country, the collective action initiative, and a specific program. Thanks, Anders. It's important to say that all this data is confidential. One institution does not see the data of the other. This report is very, very important. That shows our 35 KPIs. It's important to say this data is not real. It's fake data. This way, as I said, this report allows comparison on my institution, where my institution are with my indicators and KPIs on the column G. And as I said, allows a comparison with a municipality, a state, and this way allows to see my institution, where we are within the KPIs that we are measuring. These are our 4 KPIs that we are measuring within the KPI, within the collective action initiative, agrochemicals, responsible use of agrochemicals. As I said before, we are working, or we are measuring the KPIs number 9, number 10, number 25, and number 31. Just as example, the KPI number 9, for example, the graphic in brown on the left, we have institutions with high level of compliance in this KPI, and we have institutions with low level of compliance and this level. This way, we work on actions within the initiative for the institutions being at the same level, high level, of course. This way, the institutions improve their KPIs and elevate the coffee sector as a whole. This goes for all the other indicators, number 10, number 25, and the 31 as a whole. Just an example how we are measuring, how we are using the KPIs to follow and to improve the coffee sector as a whole. Next, please. The coffee data standard, as I said, the reports of CSCF allows comparison, different levels of comparison between institution, municipality, state, region, country, collective action initiative, specific programs as a whole. The next step is comparison at global level. And the coffee data standard, we are working here in Brazil. We have already started this process. We are working aligned with the coffee data standard KPIs. Alignment process to incorporate standardized metrics into existing measurement approach and standardized reporting. It's important to say to identify and point out sustainability indicators to serve as parameters to know and apply resources accurately, when identify growers to join actions and receive resources, for example, agrochemical storage units, identify growers as showcases, sustainability level, basic, intermediate, and advanced, monitor and measure the progress of the collective initiatives, KPIs on specific issues, as we said before, as we see before. The coffee entities use the CSCF reports and the internal management system for sustainability as tool to identify gaps and make decisions. Plan, do, check, act. And the last but not the least, identify and point out sustainability indicators serve as parameters to continuous improvement of the coffee sector as a whole. Increase profitability, standard of living, stability of production, and sustainability of growers. It's a long-term vision, but we need to start now.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, for, the insights. And again, as a team, you can see just by going around the world, all the way from Brazil, passing through Africa and Vietnam, the insights and also the commonality in terms of some of the things or some of the challenges that we are talking about, whether it be challenges of use of resources, like you've rightly seen in water on the other side, and so on. So just to get the dots together, because like you can see, we've taken you around the whole issues all around the world, even in these times of COVID when you cannot travel. So if you want to travel, just join a GCP webinar. So again, getting back, ideally, the reasons why we are talking about all these is because, we want to address global issues collectively. And it's not only collectively as a coffee sector, but also, under the auspices of the Sustainable Development Goals, address the issues collectively as a whole, wonderful world that is powered by coffee. And then on the other hand, again, when we come, from the global issues of how, either on the macro side, whereby consuming much or of in an unsustainable way then means, of course, we would need another 3 extra planets by 2050. When we move from that, we also look at, how then do we use the power, and especially the power of local action as enabled by GCP, to really put national priorities and interventions to address the issue of sustainable coffee. And here, we are talking about, setting the stage for what the greatest challenges are. It could be the issue of flattening wrong curves in a country like Kenya. It could be issues of, water use that is not efficient under SDG 6 in a country like Vietnam. It could be issues or social issues in Brazil, or issues to ensure that we are either managing pests efficiently and effectively. So coming back together and saying, what are those issues and where can we target our efforts towards that. And then after you've put all these efforts together, like Brazil has shown us, whereby you plan, you identify your issues, you put efforts together to try and address those issues. Then we use measurement as a feedback mechanism. And that is the point then that measurement comes in as a feedback mechanism of, one, whether the efforts that we are putting in place. And when you talk to the people, especially the ones that were kind enough, to report on their sustainable purchases, when you talk to them, it takes a lot of effort, both in terms of, knowledge, in terms of financial efforts, in terms of capacity building efforts. But then we all need to come back and ask ourselves, are those efforts making a change? And, when Andreas was presenting about, guidance, once we have the priority, we need guidance on how, to try and deal with these issues. And, we have, whether it's the baseline coffee code, whether it's all the standards that are represented here today. We have ARE, we have fair trade, where we even have coffee practices in the room today, or it's 4C services, all these different standards, set up, a bit of clarity about what practices do we need to put in place, to deal with these issues. And not to forget, you have the certification standards, but you also have trader efforts. And I can see some of them in this place today, all the way, and I'll put them in alphabetical order so that then I don't seem to be favoring anyone. All the way from at source, I won't name who owns at source, then to Bloom, which is B, and then of course to the Way, and of course, and Veritas, I can't remember the name, and so on. All these particular efforts that are being put to guide the efforts. But at the end of the day, we still ask ourselves, are we getting there? And also there is the plan, I won't mention by who. And then once that effort has been put in place, when we measure that, there is the question of how do we measure it? And we have challenges because, like in the first example that I showed you, if we were using our own ways of measuring, then it becomes very difficult for a Kenyan to tell, is my mom really the best cook, or is the mom of my Costa Rican friend even a better cook? And if we do it the way we do it, in Kenya, we would be doing it for you in terms of kilos of cherry per tree. And then our friends down in Costa Rica would be doing it in fanegas. And I would go like, okay, so how many kilos per tree make a fanega? But the idea of really then agreeing on a common indicator then helps me then check what is making, is Costa Rica doing better? And if they're doing better, then I can call them and ask, what are some of the things that you put in place that, are enabling you, to ensure you are getting about 900 to a ton per hectare, well, we can't even make with smallholders a third of that. So there's that part, and that is where then measurement comes into play. And you've been shown all around, the countries. And we had the issue of collective action initiatives. For instance, the effort they put in water in Vietnam, of then trying to show, how do we bring the water down to the agreed practice of about 400 liters, per tree. And, that issue. And then, of course, then adding to the fact that, Vietnam wants to address the SDG 6, in a clear matter. But then it also helps, some of the front runners. And these ones I will mention because we also like, people who put their money in an effort to try and address issues. So that particular project, was, I think, by EDE and partly by Nestle, in trying then to ensure you're putting efforts in place to reduce that amount to that. So how do we also align, in the way we put efforts? Because if we were all trying to use our small bags to address SDG 6, I truly tell you, that's the reason they put SDG 17 on partnership. Then on the other part is really, we've seen that alignment adds value to the ground, be it on the issue of water efficiency, be it on the issue of social practices, or be it on issue on productivity. And at times, I know the last time we talked about doubling our production, our friends in Brazil were like, are you guys crazy? But the reason we are doubling the production in especially African countries is because we are producing less than a third of what we have the possibility of doing. And then last but not least, of course, we mentioned the issue of collective action initiatives. And again here, what we are talking about is really us coming together and knowing that the challenges that we have are not going to be solved by one of us, but sustainability is a shared responsibility for all of us. So we put in our amounts, but also to ensure efficiency, because tomorrow, if one partner decides to work on the issue of water and put in all their funds in Vietnam, and then another one comes and does the same, I can truly assure you they are not going to get it to 400 liters. But then when they come together, then they are able to bring that a bit much lower. And then as we go to the next step, I think as you've seen from these is really, we are calling back on the call to action. And on the call to action, there are a couple of things. And I know we started with mentioning some of the things that we are calling the rosters towards, and we also showcased the ones that have answered the call. But there's also call to action, for producing countries, whether it's setting national priorities, ensuring that they are efficient, enabling environments, then to ensure that coffee is produced effectively, or any other player. You might be an NGO. We saw NGOs are the biggest in this meeting today. How do we put our acts together to address this particular issue? Because like I've said, I can promise you, one person is not going to do it alone. So I could go on, and I've taken you around circle, but again, we are trying to say here today that measurement is only important because we've worked together and we want to show how far we are going. And then we also want to ask ourselves, the far that we've gone, is it where we wanted to be? And what can we do better? The feedback mechanism, because like today, we know the cost of processing through that data collection, the cost of processing cherry in Kenya, a kilo of green beans in Kenya comes to about 52 cents, just processing that coffee. And we know through that data that it's possible to take it down to about a third of that. But we also know through that data that we have inefficient producers that are doing it at 3 times that in the country. And this is the power that we are talking about, from that data. So without much ado, I will hand it back to my colleague Andreas, just to mention a few bits on the next topic.
Thank you, George. I just got some requests here. We have some questions in our Q&A box, and as we are a bit ahead of time, we agreed that we will take a little bit of time to answer some of those. And I think Caroline came up with a little list of things she picked out. So please feel free to shoot your questions, and we're going to try and answer these together as much as possible.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. One question we received was that data collection at farm level is very expensive. How can the cost be reduced of measuring by enumerators? How can be this done? So maybe Andreas, you can say a few words, and I think Brazil has a good approach there as well, how they do that, and to increase the use of the app.
I think I can mention a bit of that, because I think for the kind of data collection we've shown you in there. That's one of the first things that we got. And I'm sure we will not be able to get partners, to be funding us forever to try and collect data. But one of the things that we realize in terms of innovation towards the end is the issue of one, commonality, and two, the fact that we have more than one person seeing those farmers for whatever reason, whether it's an agrochemical person going to sell an agrochemical to that farmer, or it's an extension officer from the government, or it's one of us NGOs in this room going to see that person. But if we agree on a common tool and on a common set of indicators, then it becomes easy for me to agree that, for instance, I can see in the room we have TechnoServe and we have Enveritas, that if Enveritas goes and they are using the same common indicator, then tomorrow I do not have to go through that cost. And together, through a national platform or a national dialogue, we can then come together and say who has data in this issue. And that's one of the ways that we've managed, past where we were funded, to try and get data from many other areas. Because like you said, the cost is prohibitive, but again, the innovations are not prohibitive.
Thank you, George. Eduardo, maybe you can share a few insights from Brazil.
Okay, it's a good question. It's a good question. Here in Brazil, as I said during my presentation, we provide the trainings for the technicians how to use the CSCF. This way, we are promoting, we are contributing that this technician to improve their time on the field during the collecting data. And also, this is a challenge for us to bring more producers for the app to measure. This way, we developed a statistic formula that shows, for example, I am an institution that has 1,000 coffee producers. The cooperative uses this formula, and the formula shows a reduced number of the producers that should be interviewed. This way, to reduce costs, some members in Brazil have already started using this formula. This way, we are working together with the institutions to bring them to bring more producers for the app. Imagine. I don't know if I answered the question. Tamara, if you can help me.
Yes, of course. But you went very well, Eduardo. The thing is that collecting data really takes a lot of resources, human resources and time. So one thing that we could do is creating a statistic formula with the guidance of a statistic expert. So institutions do not have to collect data from 500 or 1,000 coffee growers in a short period of time. So they can use the formula to statistically select a group of growers that can represent the whole. So, for example, we have to collect data from 100 growers that represent 500 growers. So this way we can have information on the KPIs faster and with spending less resources. That's it. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much.
Maybe let me quickly chip in on that topic as well. One thing is the collective effort in data collection, which is one key point and basically one of the key aspects of the coffee data standard, for example, because we should not forget the role about other stakeholders in the coffee supply chain. For example, looking at certification bodies, they are collecting data for the certification audits. Now imagine if we have like in one area many different players collecting data in the same way, and then even looking at exchanging this information. This would reduce the cost, the effort for data collection over time massively. And the more standardized we use this data or keep this data and exchange it, the more credibility we create on this as well. So this is an important part that we are also aiming at. Obviously, it's again about convening all the stakeholders, bringing them together, and also agree and align on how to share this information in a way. So it needs facilitation for that. But basically, first of all, as a first step, agreeing on the same indicators and metrics and the data formats. This is one of the first steps. And all of us could play a big role in that to reduce, even more reduce the cost for data collection over time. Besides the incentives for example, farmer self-reporting, which we also, let's say, piloted in the Vietnamese context. But this is, I think, still a way to go. It really depends on, on the tools that are available.
Yeah, good point, Andres. I would like to add just a quick thing also. Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Here in Brazil, we have just a very quick example of two partners in the responsible use of agrochemicals initiative. These partners have their own app to collect data, but when they saw the possibility of having to share this information and have this information compatible with the other information with all other institutions in different municipalities or states or regions, or even at national level, they said, okay, hey, I want to share my information from my app with you. So we had intensive work on aligning these two things, my partner's data and the CS app. We put them together, we mapped what each of them measured, and then we could get more information. So what you said, Andres, it's really the point. We need to exchange the same information. We need to report the same thing. Just a quick example.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. And thank you, Caroline, for these questions, and also Eduardo and George to chip in here with your responses. We're, I think, now on track in terms of timing, so we will not take any more questions here. We will still take them, so please feel free to push them into the Q&A box. We will take them up afterwards and send them back with some answers via email to you, also along with the slides, because I think this was one of the questions in the Q&A box as well, so you will get a copy of the slides as well. So with that, I would like to go a little bit further to the last steps we want to present. One thing that we haven't touched yet here in this presentation is basically how can we go into more, farmer-facing services. The coffee data standard and the NSC data collection, all these things are helping us to shape local agendas and to get things going on the ground. But what is basically one of the aspects which is missing is a direct feedback to farmers, or when we talk about data sharing across different instances, then there always comes the key question up, what about data governance? What about sensitivity of certain information, for example, farmer names and addresses together with geolocations, or even then economic information? We have, in the European context, for example, we have regulations that really restrict handling this kind of data. So it's one of the key issues that we need to address as well. And together with some of our global partners, we are working on some kind of next steps. On the one hand side, we want to involve more partners, for example, governments, and give them also an incentive to chip in terms of harmonized reporting, more streamlined SDG reporting, but also better informed policy decisions, for example. But also we want to make these things adaptable to other commodities and add more value to data. And to do that, we are working together in a project that is funded by ICEAL with the Better Cotton Initiative and some other cotton and coffee partners like the International Coffee Organization, etc. What is it aiming at? It's basically a cross-commodity sustainability performance framework where some of the indicators we discussed on the coffee data standard are also reflected. but a bit more tied to other commodities as well to make it adaptable. And the key values here we are aiming at, it's an ongoing project, are triggering further development of advanced and more technical services to farmers, but also linking data collection and SDG reporting to the business needs across the supply chains, but also upstream supply chain actors. So they have their business needs. They want to have some kind of reporting methodology that fits into their daily processes, but also adds value. Like the data should add value, given more context, yeah, which, for example, could be weather history and others. But one of the crucial things as well is creating proper feedback mechanisms to farmers, to producers. They want to not only give their data, they want to know, okay, what's in for me as a farmer? What's the value for me? And if we give them back their information with more context, with more learnings, they can take this up and work with this information, compare themselves to other areas, regions, but also use this information for further decision-making in their own processes, right? And basically one of the other key aspects is we are seeking for more government endorsement to include governments, not only talk to governments all the time and, you know, watch out for more money. We want to include them into these processes in terms of reporting, so they have a better overview of their agricultural sectors and they can intervene more efficiently. And yeah, I think this is something that's an ongoing project. I would basically like to invite you to stay tuned on that, because we are reaching out on this with the next phase that's just coming up. The indicators are already there. So we have a cross-commodity indicator set, and we are going to invite you to participate in this discussion. And with that, I would ask you one more question, like to the audience here. It's basically now up to you. We've shown like our tool set, we've shown what we are doing, and obviously we want to invite you to be part of that journey. And we came up with a few of those options. So one thing you could do, or would you want to do it, make your sustainability efforts more and investments more visible by, for example, participating in the roaster retail reporting. By the way, the snapshot on that, and George has mentioned it in the beginning, the snapshot on that from the reporting year 2018 is going to be published very, very soon after this webinar. So stay tuned on this. Watch out for our newsletter, and for the push out, you will receive some more insights on this pretty soon. Or would you maybe like to be a community member of this community who is using the common indicators and also further help shaping them? Because obviously any standard and any indicator set is basically a living document. So maybe let's do this together and adapt it a bit more to, you know, realities we even don't know yet. And also, maybe would you like to discuss with us on the cross-commodity performance measurement framework, which I just shortly or briefly explained to you, which is called the Delta framework. So feel free to chip in on this as well. Or, which is also one thing that's led by GCP and is gaining a lot of impact and interest in many cases here. Would you like to align your efforts and join collective action initiatives that we are raising in different, starting in different countries, as Brazil has presented and as Vietnam has presented as well? In the meantime, I just want to show, you know, a little bit of appreciation about our very supportive GCP members, for example, you know, participating in the mentioned collective action initiatives, but also and they're really active in that and are really pushing forward. But also to our strategic co-funding partners who are actually enabling the core work that helps us to enable this local action and convene others. And you know, all the other partners participating in our programs, which are really supportive in creating global results through local action and alignment. And what is really exciting is there are many of you wanting to align your efforts in solving issues with others by joining the collective action initiatives. This is great news. We will definitely get back to you. Thank you for participating here. And in general, I would say, again, Sustainability is our shared responsibility, and I would like to thank you for participating. Thanks to the attendees here, to the panelists here for speaking, for showcasing your sites and your activities. And I wish all of you a great day ahead. Stay safe and healthy.